Hello everyone, my name's Dee. Not the name my mum gave me, she called me Derek, but that's a trash name, so I never really go by it. No offense to anyone that's called Derek in the audience. So I want to thank Street Level Photo Works and Photo Fusion for the opportunity not only to exhibit, but to also create the work called 4pm in the Endz, which is what I'll be talking about. My work is mainly in collaboration with young people. For the last 5 years, I've worked on various outreach projects and participatory projects that have worked with different kinds of young people, and that started with my own concerns about where photography was going and my view of the inner city. I grew up in a council estate in South London called Clapham Junction, an estate called Winstanley Estate, which was famous or made famous by a group called the Soul Solid Crew. And one of the things that kind of stuck out to me was the way that the image of young black men was being treated within that particular estate. And it occurred to me that a photograph had the power to incriminate or even exonerate people depending on the stories and the literature that was provided with those images, whether that's a statement that was put in the news or whether that was something that a young person had written supporting their own images. And so it instantly occurred to me that I could use photography in a way to kind of reinterpret the way that people saw images of people who looked like me or dressed like me or came from the same growing up experiences as me. And so this was an important body of work, and this was a collaboration with Miss Becky Warnock, who's just sitting over there. And this was a body of work that was created at the Harris Academy in Mitcham. And this was with a young group of boys who were identified as teenagers who were using sexting or sharing images that weren't necessarily positive. And so we were using photography as a way to ask them to ask questions about their masculinity and the influences behind that, like the media influences. And this was a photo exercise that was created by Becky, where we asked them to take pictures of themselves that they thought represented themselves. So we gave them Polaroid cameras, and they would just take images straight away. And then one of the things that came up in the discussion was, well, you've taken this image of yourself. What would you do if I said I was going to give that to the news and call it the Naughty Boys of Harris Academy? And they were like, oh, well, you couldn't do that. I wouldn't give you permission. And I said, well, that's exactly what's happening when you're sharing images of these young girls. And that kind of created something where they clicked on and got them enticed in the idea of using photography in a way that would be different and more positive. So that's what we did with that particular project. The reason why I bring it up is because that was the birthplace of 4pm in the Endz. Based from that project, I had discussions with them about these ideas that I was thinking about the inner city and representation there, and they were telling me about the area that they were from, which was Pollard's Hill, the neighbouring council estate, and some of the issues that they were having with gang membership and the way that that area had been perceived and the way that some of them had altercations with the police because they looked like the gang members because everyone in that area wore the same clothing. So that's where 4pm in the Endz came from. In order to create 4pm in the Endz, I applied to do a residency with Photo Fusion, which was for socially engaged artists. It was a year-long residency, and the way I went about creating the work was that once I had heard from these young people about the area, I got in contact with the school again and asked them if I could work with some of the young people from that school in order to do a longer stretch of photographic workshops. And then they spoke to me about the local youth centre as well, where not a lot of opportunities to do creative arts were being given to the young people at that particular facility. So I was working with young people from a youth centre, which was considered one of the places which was a hotspot for so-called gang members, and these young people from the school who didn't really visit the youth centre. And both of them had very different ideas about how the area was being perceived. So the way that we engaged the project was that we did a lot of research into the area and what was happening. So we went on social media and we looked at images that were going on. And then luckily we found something which was a video by Oscar Newman, who's an American theorist, and he came up with this idea called defensible space theory. And it was him thinking about the way that architecture within council estates was this primer for criminal activity, and that actually it was the architecture that was behind some of the crime rates. And he had gone around the world. He had gone to like estates in America, like Puro in Chicago. And at the very end of his study, he came to Pollard's Hill because it was one of the newly developed low-rises. And he asked the question at the end of his video, and the clips of that video are actually in the videos that support the work. And he asked this question as to whether or not the young kids in Pollard's Hill would grow up to be the same kind of criminals that he was seeing in America. And we use that question as a way of being our main investigation. And so what was happening, one of the things that you'll see a young person told me is that when you typed Pollard's Hill onto YouTube, the first thing that came up was this M&S gang, which was one of the prominent music groups within that area. And so our study was really about the relationship between the music that that crew was making within that area, the image that it created for that particular area, and finding studies from the goldsmiths who had done research in that area for the regeneration program, and bringing that all together to create something that could reflect on that. So what we did is that we went through a series of me teaching them how they could use interview techniques, how they could use different cameras, how they could use video. Lucky enough, the Housing Association gave us a flat which we could use as an interview base. So we went about asking people in the community if we could do interviews with them. We started with them just practicing against each other, and that's what you'll see in here, where they did little video tests where they could just kind of play around with the idea of interviewing each other as a way of getting comfortable with the idea of interviewing other people. So you can see like Clement just having a little fun with his like little video test there. And that was really important because it taught them, one, to be comfortable with each other, but then also to have the courage to do the same kind of work if they were going to go out into the community, whether I was there or not. And so I would ask them to take pictures of their phone, of things in the area that interested them as a starting point. I would ask them to do post-it notes that reflected some of their views about the area as well. We were just collecting a bunch of information that would finally develop into something that we could move forward with. The way M&S develops is that there was an original group called Cash Cartel, and Cash Cartel were the first rap group in Pollard's Hill, and then M&S were the youngest, basically, a group of youngsters who had developed from there. What was lucky is when we were looking at this work and we was looking at these videos, I showed them a video by a group called The Roots, and The Roots had this video called What They Do, which was a mockery of typical hip-hop videos that you would see, like flashing jewelry and all of these other things. And they were asking questions within that video, and you'll see it at the top. It's an American hip-hop video, where they were just making fun of those videos. They were saying, if you saw guys in like an expensive car, it would be like, this car's rented. And so I asked the young people to do the same thing with the videos that they were seeing in their area. So they would come up with like funny questions like, why are you wearing sunglasses in the winter? And like all of those questions about these videos. And what was interesting is that this MC, Karim, when we were actually doing this challenge and we were writing these questions, he just went walking by the community center that we was walking in. So I ran out and I chased him down, thinking, well, I was an undercover policeman or something because of his stance. But I just asked him literally there and then, like, if I told him that we're doing this project and we're literally like just been watching your videos, would you be interested in becoming part of this project? And he was up for it. He was up for having these young people ask him questions. And so he came in for one of the interviews. And through connecting with Karim, I was able to connect with all of the other MCs. And so that was it. In terms of making the work, we just went about doing a number of things. We did photography sessions in the school. We went to Photo Fusion. We brought the MCs in and we did further interviews with them. By then, the young people had progressed into using digital SLRs and medium format cameras, and you'll see clips of them just kind of working, like going through the estate. It was a long, like 6 months in the winter. I don't know how we survived it. Surprisingly, I thought most of them would walk away from most of the shoots, but they were really engaged. And yeah, the work that we ended up creating was this project that you'll see outside today. So hopefully everyone gets a chance to kind of look at it.